Hello guys and welcome back. In the previous part we successfully designed our sign-in page, but unfortunately this page currently does not validate the email. So if I put a gibberish email like me@me, which is not a valid email address, and also put the password here, you can see this does not validate the email and also the password. And if I click on this sign in button, you can see nothing is happening. So this is not the ultimate goal. What we want is we want to validate this form, and also when we click on this button, if this form is not validated, we should have some response, and if it is validated, later on we will do the actual sign in with the server. So the first thing I noticed that this password should be the ops secure. So let me do it here. That is op secure text, and I am going to put it as true because the password should not be visible, and right now it is good. So to validate this form and also to validate the email, the password, and do the actual sign in, what we can do, we can just put it here inside this state class, or this inside the state of this stateful widget, and whenever we want to change the state, we can call the set state method. But this is not a good practice. This can be done with a small sized application, but if you do it for medium size or larger apps, this is not a good practice, because our ultimate goal is to separate the UI from the logic classes, or to put the logic classes inside the separate classes to handle it easily, and whenever you want to change something, so you know the place where to change it. But if you just put the code or the UI code and the logic codes in the same class, then it would be a little bit headache to just maintain this application. So how we can do this one, as I mentioned in the introduction part to this mobile application, we created these classes inside this application application layer, if you remember. So inside the application layer we have these classes and we have the models, but currently these directories are empty. So what we want is we want to create a model for our sign in and also a model for our sign up, which is not right now designed sign up page. And also we want to have this model for our sign in and everything related to the sign in and also the sign up page. So how we can create that? We can create a model. So I am going to this application layer, and inside these models, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a form or a class right now, and I'm going to call it as a sign in model. So let me put it as sign in form model dart to be a little bit more descriptive, and also we need to name it. So this is purely a Dart class, so I'm going to call it as sign in form model. And this sign in form model, you can see we have here the email and also we have the password. So we have a string email and also we have a string password. Just make sure that these fields are not final, because if you just if you declare it as final, you need to instantiate it or initialize it with a constructor, and that's not what we want. So we have these two properties, which is our email and also the password. So what we want is we need to have some mechanism to set this email and also set this password. To set the email, so I'm going to create a function or a method, and I'll call it as set email, and this set email will accept a string email, which is the input to this function. And what we want is we want to just initialize this dot email equal to email. But if we do so, this is good, this is okay. And how about the user entering an invalid email. So suppose this currently this email is not a valid email, and if the user is entering this password, how we can inform the user that the email that you entered is invalid or incorrect? So for that, what we need is we need to have some checking here. So we need to check the email validation here. So if suppose the email is not validated, what we want is we want to throw an error. So let me create a class and I will call it as error. So class, we can call it as login error, and this extends the error class. And what this class has a final string message, which we need to put it there. So I am going to create the constructor by pressing the command dot on Mac or control dot on Windows, and also we want to initialize it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a named parameter. So if the user is entering, we need to know the message. So this is our class, and right now we are going to check it. If suppose for now, if the email that the user entered does not contain, for just email contain or contains the at keyword for now, if the email contains the at keyword, so that's okay. But if does not contain the at keyword, what we want is we want to throw an error, and this error is our login error that we created, login error, and this is the class, and this requires the message. And what we want, this message is a string, so what we want to return, we want to return that invalid message. So this is our the message that the users will get. But the only the email which contains the at keyword is also not a valid email. Suppose if I write something me at and don't return anything else or don't type anything else, this is also not a valid email. So how we can validate an email? I have already created another file here called note.md, and here I will put all the the notes that I am using in this application inside this file, and each time I am going to upload the changes on GitHub, so you have the the latest files and latest notes, and always you just check here. And if I suppose using something like this string, which is a regex and used for validating the email, then you have access to it. What I'm going to do is right now I am going to create another class, and which this class will return a boolean, and we just want to check or validate the email. So validate the email, and this will accept the email or the input and returns this reg expression. And this reg expression is this one, which is a regex. And what we want is we want to check that has a match with the email that the user is entered. So let me save it and let me close this bar. Here you can see that we have this regex expression, and this regex is just to check whether the email is valid or not. And if the email has a match with this one, then it returns a boolean. So if I hover on this has match, you can see that this has match has a return type of boolean and has the input of a string. So right now we can use it here. So what we want is we want to check if the email is not validated. So I put the not here, and you can check it, you can see it here. If the email is not validated, we want to throw an error. And otherwise, if the email is a valid email, what we want is we want to just initialize this email equal to the email. And the same thing I am going to copy for the password, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it as set password, and this password is also going to accept the password that the user is going to just put it here. So we need to check the password validation, and here we don't need this validate email. For now, what we want to check is we want to check if the password.length is greater than 6 characters, and if it is so, we are going to just initialize the this.password to the password that the user is entered. Otherwise, we want to throw this error, and this error will say that the password, currently it will say password length should be more than 8 or more than 6 characters. So this is the message, and this is our forum that we separated from the UI. But now it is the time to just feed this forum or this login forum inside our sign in page. So we have that forum, but unfortunately we don't know how to feed that forum inside this page or inside this widget or inside this widget tree, which is a widget tree. That you can see that we have this scaffold, and inside the scaffold we have this app bar, and also inside the body we have this container, and so on. So basically this is a widget tree in Flutter, and I assume that you know the basics of Flutter, and you know what is the widget tree, and also you know a little bit about the state management. So right now we have this forum created, but how we can inject it or how we can feed it inside this widget tree? Hopefully the state rebuilder package that I told you that we are going to use it for our state management will provide you with some classes, like the one is called the Injector class. And this Injector class, let me search for it, Injector. So this Injector class is used to inject the model or the state that you are using into the widget tree. So what we are going to do is here, let me just cut or this container from here to here, and for the body part, what we need is we need to have this injector. So this injector is coming from the states rebuilder, and if I hover on it, you can see that this injector class has many properties, but it needs the builder, and this is a requirement for this the injector. And if I save it like this, you can see we have this error. And also one thing else that this injector has is the models associated with that. And first of all, we need to inject the model or the models that we want to inject in this widget tree. So right now we have only one one form or one model or one state, and we want to inject it here. But if you have more than that, this is an array and a list that you can put more than one model. And suppose for this login form or for the sign in page you want to inject more than one model, you can do it. There is no worries with that. So this inject is a list of injectable. So this list of injectable, here you can see the examples here. So we have this inject and also the type, which is int, and what you need is to just create this one. And if you suppose have a custom model like we have, we can inject it like inject the model name and also inject it like this. So this is our this is how we can inject a custom model. What we need is the inject only. So the inject, and this inject should have a type, and right now the type is the sign in forum model. So what we need is to just initialize it, and we can initialize it like this. Just we can return it sign in model form. So that's it. So right now we injected this form inside this widget tree, and this is available to us. How this is available? Through this builder, and this builder will have the context and also the you can see the context, the build context, and this will return a widget to us. So the widget is the container widget that previously I catted out. So if I do so, you can see right now everything is working. But the good thing is that right now this sign in form is injected or feed it into this widget tree, and we have the full access to this sign in form model. And suppose there is some changes, we can track the changes inside this sign in form. So how we can have the access to this the access to the changes made inside this sign in form model? That is really easy, and that can be done using other properties of this state rebuilder. And this state rebuilder has many things. I just encourage you to once study for this one, and there is lots of tutorials on Medium and also on the GitHub provided by the author of this state rebuilder class, which is this guy. And they are really good tutorials that you can just go through it, and they are really helpful and you can learn a lot from it. So to just have to notify the changes inside this model, we can put this whole model or this tree inside a state builder, so that a state builder can listen for the changes made inside this sign in form model. But putting all this this widget tree inside that state rebuilder is costly. So what you can do, you can just put this part, this sign, this text form field inside the state builder. Let me cat it and write a state builder. And this state builder will have a type. So the type is sign in form. Let me put it sign in form model. And once we have this one, you can this has many properties, and the properties, the first is the models that we want to listen for the changes. So the models that we want to listen for the changes, we can put it here. But currently we have only one model, and also we made this generic type, so we don't need to put it inside the models. What we can do is we can just call the builder, and this builder will have the context. Let me just hover on it, the context, the build context, and also reactive model. And also as we put the generic type as sign in for model, you can see right now we have it here. So we have the context here, and also we have the login form model available to us. But how we can have access to this model? Because we just inject it here. So this is the this part is inside this injector, so we inject it inside the widget tree, so we have the full access to it. And right now what I can do, I can just return that text form field, but there is no changes. And still, if I type something gibberish, you can see that it is still not validating or not informing. And how we can do that is inside this text form field we have something called onChanged. Sorry, not on tab, on changed. And this onChanged will give a string, and this string for now is our email that the user is entering. So this is here we'll get the, let me print it, and the email. So here we have the email, but right now this email is not going to do anything. So let me open the terminal here, and let me close this navigation bar, and inside the debug console, if I put something inside this email, you can see we have the output here. And if I put a wallet email to, suppose, John at doe, like this one.com, you can see we have it here. So here we are informed about the email. So what we can do is we can use this login for model. So basically this model that we have, the sign in model that we have. So right now it is not here, it's here. So we have sign in for model, and we can access it and we can set the email. So let me do that. Here inside this unchanged, I am going to call that login for model, and this login for model hopefully has a set state, and this set state will only change or notify about these changes with this state builder only. So how we can know that this will not modify the whole widget tree? Let me explain it here. Let me put a print here. So this will not call the build context method, the build method inside this state every time. So what I can do is I can just put here, calling build. So calling build method. So that's it. Here you can see, let me put something. So let me do one thing else here, and let me open the terminal. So right now, if I refresh the app and open this debug console, you can see we have this calling build method. So basically this build method is called. But if right now for this part unchanged, and unchanged I call this login form dot set state, this will only change this part inside this state builder, or will get notified about the changes inside the sign in for model, and will just modify this part only. And this set state hopefully has the state. So basically this state is our login form state, and what we can do is right now we can use this state and call the set email that we have inside that login form and pass the email that we got. And if I do so, and one thing else that here we need to do is just catch error, I am going to put true. So later on I'll tell you why I just made it like that. So right now what we have is here we are calling the set state method, and if I suppose open the sign in for model, here if I print the email, let me print the email here, and right now you can see that we don't have any printf other than this inside the build method. And if I put an email, you can see we have the email printed out, and this is coming from our model. But as you know, currently this will throw an error, but we are not informed. And I told you here we have this inside the set state, we have a property called catch error. So how we can notify that this is not a valid email? It is really easy. Inside this decoration, which is a text decoration, you have something else, and that is the error text, I believe. So error text, and if there is an error, so how we can know that there is an error is still we have access to this login form. So we have login form field and has a property has error, and if it has error, then what we want is we want to just put or just print or just make this text error to the message that we have. So login for model dot error, so dot message. And this, how we know that we have the message, because we throw an error from this login error, and this has the message property inside that. Just make sure about it, because this message is not coming from anywhere else. If not, we want to put null. So right now already if I save it, you can see the changes, and we get the message as invalid message. So why we get the invalid message? Because we have here invalid message, and if I change it to invalid email and save it, you can see if I change anything else, we are getting an invalid email. And if I put a valid email .me.com, and that error is gone. And if I just remove this part, still you get the validation error. So this is how we can use, or how first of all we can feed. And one thing else before that, one thing else that I remember I found, let me just remove this print from here and save it. Let me refresh the app to just clean this debug console. And right now we see that we have this calling build method, which is coming from this inside this build, as I mentioned earlier. But if I put something here, you can see this is changing, but this is not calling the build method anymore. Why? Because it is just going to rebuild this in whatever is inside this part, inside this builder widget. So this state rebuilder only will change, or only will rebuild the part that we put inside this rebuilder. And this is really effective because we are not building the entire widget tree. So we are not calling anytime this build method. And this is how this set rebuilder can help us to first of all separate the logic from the code, and also get notified about the changes made inside that class that we separated. And the same thing I am going to do with this text form field, which is our password. So I am going to cut it. I am going to put it inside a state builder, and the type of this state builder is sign in form field. So we have this one, and what we have is, as I mentioned, we have the builder, and this builder will have a context and also will have the login form model. So let me call this one as sign in form model, because that's what I called it. So we have it. So this is not, should be context. It's okay. And even we don't need this context as we are not using it. So I am going to put an underscore there. And if I save it like that, you can see we return null, and that's why we got this error. But if I just return this text form field, which is our password, that error is gone. So let me refresh it to clean this debug console, and let me close this bar, navigation bar, by pressing Control B. And here we have this password, but right now this password is not notified and we don't get any error. And so I will do the same thing as I did with this unchanged of the email. So I am going to copy it because I want to do it a little bit faster. So we have this sign in form, that not login form, and here we get the password. So the password, and we will call the set password method, and we are going to pass the password that we have. So right now we have access to it, but how about the error? So we are not initializing the error here inside the declaration. I am just going to call it, and just going to paste it here, sorry, and I am just going to call it as sign in form model. So if I save it like that, and if I put something inside the passwords right now, it's okay, but we are not getting any error. Why we are not getting an error? So let me put this one aside, and I go here, because inside the set password we check set password.length is greater than 6, then we are getting the error. It should be less than 6. If the password length is less than 6 characters, we want to get this error, otherwise it's okay. So if I put something else, yeah, we get that error. So if I just put something and it's more than 6 characters, we are good to go. So we have this functionality also in place. And how about the clicking on this button? And right now you can see we are not getting anything. and that is why, because we don't do anything on this button. So we have this material button here, and on press of that we are not doing anything else. And one thing else that I noticed also here, on press of this flat button we are not doing anything. So the first thing I am going to put it here is the calling the navigator class, navigator.push named, and we have the context available to us, and we want to just put the route name. So route name is sign up route, and this is the benefits of defining that route constants that I was told you before. You can see right now we just calling it here, and right now if I click on that, you can see we are navigated to the sign up page, and we have this one. So this functionality is in place. And how about this material button? If I click on it, we are not getting any info. So how we can get information about the the models that we have here? Suppose if I press here, we want to have access to this to the model, and also we need to do something. Here is not the similar functionality as entering the email or to just check for the notified, but we want to have is we want to just click on it, and we need some functionality. And for that, what we can do is here inside this builder, and after this context, I mean, we initialize this sign in form, and right now what we can do is we can have an instance of that. So this is basically a singleton instance of that sign in form model. Sorry if it's really a long name. So basically this is the singleton of this instance model that we can have access to it. It is not same as this login model that, let me change this one as well to, sign in form model. So sorry for confusing you. So we have this one, and how we can have a singleton instance of this sign in for model, that is really easy. That is, we can just call this injector again, and here we have something we can get it which will return a single instance of this the sign in form field model, or we can get it as reactive. So the good thing about reactive is it will check for the changes, and we need to put the type, because the type is generic. What we need is the sign in form model here. So right now we have access to this singleton, and hopefully this singleton we can have access to it. And here for this material button, what I'm going to do is I am going to just copy this one right now and cut it, and here we will have a state builder again, and this else state builder, for this one we'll not use or will not type it at subtype it with this one, or will not make the type as sign in model. What we want is, as I mentioned before, we need to create these models. The models that we have, it's here, and these models, what we want is we want the singleton model that we have, singleton sign in model, and for that we'll have a builder method, and this will just return us this context that we are not interested, and also the model which we don't want that as well, and we want to return this material button. So it's the same thing, but right now hopefully we have access to this model. So let me put this model here, and we don't even going to use that. So we have this one in place, and on press of that, what we want is right now on press of this button, we want to just listen for the changes inside this singleton button. So we want to have some access to it. Singleton dot, we have the state here available to us, and this state will have the state of this sign in form field. So this is how we can access it using singleton. And we can, you can see right now we have access to the email password, set email, set password, or validate email. But what I'm going to do is inside, even though this singleton has something else, and that is called has error or has data. So suppose for now, if it has error, we don't want to sign in, or we want to just have a message or have an error to the user. But unfortunately, I don't know if maybe I am doing it wrong. I couldn't even in the official documentation they did it like this one, and I tried to do it the same way, but unfortunately I'm not getting the error. I don't know why this is happening. I need to create an issue on the GitHub for this library. Maybe I am doing it wrong, or there is a bug inside that. Unfortunately, this is not working. Suppose let me, sometimes it is working, but most of the time I found it's not correctly working. Suppose right now what we have is, if the singleton has error, what we want is we want to print error, and if not, it's good. And for this one, you can see that we have an error here. And if I press, let me first of all bring the terminal. So bring the terminal, console log, and here, if I press this one, you can see we are not provided with this one, has error. I don't know why it is not working. It should work basically, because if this model has an error, it should print it here, but it's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, or there is a bug in this one. So what we can do is right now inside this login for model, we can create another Boolean function. So this will return a Boolean, so we call it as validate data. So this validate data doesn't requires anything, and what we want is we just want to return if if let me put it here. So if this email is not equal to null, and this dot password is not null, and we want this dot password dot length should be greater than 6 characters, and finally we want these dot validate email, and we need to put this dot email should be true. So we want this one. So we are validating our input, and I am just going to call this method from this part because we have access to it. So we can, what we can do is we can call the state here, and from the state validate data, not validate email, so validate data. And if the data is validated, what we want is we want to just do the sign in or submit, otherwise else we want to throw an error. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reverse the logic. If this validated data is not, if data is not validated, we want to print error. So error here, or data is not validated. Let me just remove this one as well. Let me open the terminal, and if I go here, if I press this sign in button, you can see we are provided with this error. And if I change the message as data is invalid and save it, and if I press here, we are getting this one. So here we have access to the singleton, and we put this logic here. So, and if the data is valid, suppose if I put a valid email at me.com, and if I just right now click here, you can see that we are not getting, no longer we are getting that error. So you can see that these are the previous errors, but we are not getting any more. So here we have this availability. And right now, if the data is invalid, how we can just inform the user? We can just highlight this, the inputs, the email and also the password. Otherwise, we can just have, the easiest way is to have a snack bar here for the user, and to do that for the the testing purpose, I am just going to provide a key for this scaffold, and I am just going to call it as key. And here we need to have an instance of the global key, and this is the scaffold state. It's here, and it is just global key. We need to just put the key. New is not needed for the Dart with the higher versions. So we are good to go. And right now, if the data is invalid, what we need is, we need to call that key, and the current state we want to show the snack bar, and the snack bar. So this snack bar will have the content, and currently I'm going to put as text, and that data is invalid. That's it. And if I do so, and if I save it, and right now if I just refresh this app and just submit it, you can get this one as data is invalid. But this is not the color that we want. What we want is, for the error, we want the background color to be colors.red, and that's it. And if I save it right now, we are getting this error. So I know that this is not the best way to inform the user about the invalid input. We can do it better, and this is not the ultimate goal. But what I want to do is, right now I want to just copy this part, I mean this scaffold part till here. So I am going to just copy it, and I am going to paste it for our sign up page, because we need it there as well. So let me just copy this scaffold, and we are good to go, but we don't have this size boxed. Let me bring it from here, even though this is not a good way, but later on we'll refactor the code. So I'm going to paste it here. We are good to go, but it should be sign in route. And also we need to do these changes. We need to bring this injector class, and also for the sign in, for the sign app, we don't need this sign in form, because we have some extra models. What we can do is, I am just going to copy this sign in form, and I am going to change it or rename it, and I will call it as sign app form model, and that's it. So let me do it, and if I open it right now, we have this sign app. So I am just going to change the name as sign app. For the sign app, what we need is, we need the some other properties, which are a string first name, and also we have the string last name, we have a string email, we have the password, and also we have the password confirmation. So these are all our properties for the sign app. And right now I am just good. What I'm going to do is, for this one, if I do it like this, we are not going to check this one, but this one, because we want to select the best match, this part. So this should be sign app model, sign app for model. We are good. Let me just bring these images, and also I am going to change the whole sign in model to be sign app model, sign app forum model. That's it, and we are good. Let me save this one. What error, what else we are getting here? We get this key, And this key, for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this global key here, and this is the scaffold state, and I am just going to call it as key, and it is global key. So that's it. We are good to go, and if I save it, we are getting the similar or the same as the login, but it should be different. Here, first of all, for the sign in, we have the sign app, and also we have here already have an account, and here we need to put the sign in. So that's it. And if I click on sign in, we are just navigated to the sign in for the sign up here. Okay, but for the sign in, for the sign up page, what we need is we need some of these inputs, and you can do it just by copy and pasting this part or this state rebuilder. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this with the size box, and I am going to paste it again. So I'm going to change the first one so you can do it with the later one. So this is the first name, and for now we don't have the set email here anymore, but what we want is inside our sign up for model, we need to have something similar to this sign set email as a set first name, and this is our first name, and I'm going to just remove this comment here. We don't want to check for the first name validation just for now. What I'm going to do is later on we need to validate it. I am going to check for the or change this first name here, and that's it. We have this first name, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to the sign up page, and I am going to call as set first name, and I am going to put this first name, and if there is an error we want to catch it and put it here. For now it's good. So for the hint, enter your first name, so it should be like this, first name. And also for the icon, this should be person, I believe, person. Okay, so first name. So for the last name also you can do the same, and also for the password confirmation. So this is not what we want, and you can see right now we are getting the same error and for the password. So this is how you can have your own form state or your own model, and also you can just what you can do, you can just inject it or feed it inside the widget tree, and also just change or just listen for the changes. So this is our for UI, and our code or our logic is here completely. And later on, if the data is validated, what we want is we want to have the submit. Suppose this is our sign in form, submit the, or just we need to call it as sign in user. So sign in user. If suppose everything is fine here, what we want is we want to authenticate the user. So this is the other part that we are going to do in the next video. So basically this is the actual authentication, and what I am going to do is I am just going to finish the rest of the UI, and also the rest of the UI is not much or not more, just I'm going to add another text text form field here for our last name and also for our password configuration. And in the next part we are going to perform the actual sign in, and I am going to just refactor or just make this code a little bit cleaner, because this is not right now clean, and the only thing that right now I can do is I can create a class, and I'm going to call it as common error, because most of the error will have this message, and I'm going to cut this class from here, and inside the application layer, inside the classes, I am going to create something called common error, dot dart, and I'm going to paste that class, and I'm going to change it as common error, and that's it. Here we'll get an error inside the sign app, inside the sign in, and here we need to call that common error. That's it. So we just create a common class, and inside the sign app also I am just going to delete that class, and I am just going to change this to the common error, and this is it. And one thing else that I want to tell you, I am receiving your nice comments, and uh, one of our friends commented out that we don't need to call all the time for, didn't need to call the theme of context.color for the home. If you remember from here, for changing this color, we don't need to call this theme of context.primary color. Rather, what I'm going to do is, as you remember, inside the values we have this branding color, and inside this we have this primary color, which is branding color, which is our branding, and also we have branding primary color, so we can just use it. So if I go back inside the home page, and here if I select this theme of context dot primary color, for this one what I'm going to do is just pasting that color and bringing that file here, and if I save it, we are good to go. And right now we are not using that, and what I'm going to do is inside the sign app, if you see inside the sign app page also, we have it for our primary for our material color. I believe here we have it. So instead of this one, I am just put this branding color. So this is how you can, so this needs, I think this needs a color, branding color. If I put it like this, we are good to go. So you can use those colors whenever you want. If you want a color or a shape of color, suppose for this one, which needs a color here, so whenever you want a color here, it is there inside our branding color, and you can just use it anytime you want. So you don't need to type the theme of context dot primary color or accent color or whatever it is. So thank you for watching. This was all about how you can have your form validation, or how you can just connect your logic to your UI, and later on we'll do the actual authentication and also the rest of the thing. So if you don't want to miss any tutorial, kindly subscribe and hit the bell button so you'll be notified about the next tutorial.